he said, he's like, you people are worried about your jobs. You're worried about your money. I mean, because he's talking about people being afraid to post things online because their boss might see something. So you're worried about that sort of thing. People are losing their lives. Salahuddin signed peace negotiations with the Crusaders. After he defeated the Crusaders, he didn't take over all of Palestine. Many parts of it, Crusaders are still there. And so he had Jerusalem, yes. Sometimes you have to be flexible. I don't think we necessarily need the Khilafah to attain victory. It may make it easy, but we lost Jerusalem when we had the Khilafah. The Ottoman Empire was fully intact because Martin Luther King, nothing against him. He was a black hero, but he preached love thy enemy, which is great when you're the enemy. When you are the enemy, yes.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. You're listening to the Muslim Podcaster Show. I'm your host, Majid, and today I'm joined by my guest, a very special guest, once again, the founder and the host of the Islamic History Podcast, Brother Muttaqi Ismail. Assalamu alaikum, brother, and welcome back to the show.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you, Brother Majid, and thank you for having me again. As always, it's always good to talk with you and connect with the audience and just see how, just keep our relationship going, inshallah, as brothers and Muslims and fellow podcasters, I guess. We have a lot in common.
MashaAllah, yeah, that's right, man. That's right. So how you been anyway? How you been keeping?
Alhamdulillah, it's my son started college this year, so that's always a lot of money there. had to help him get a car, had to pay for lots of college expenses, and it's alhamdulillah, just those normal, hate to say, the problems I'm facing are nothing compared to other people in the world. So I'm not complaining at all, but mashallah, alhamdulillah, family's doing well for the most part. Work is doing well, podcast is doing well. So really have nothing to complain about. Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah, bro. I was, to be honest with you, I was gonna say, we're all kind of in the same boat, and the best way to describe it is first world problems, because,
Yeah.
these things, in themselves, they may seem like, they're sort of pulling you down, but when you put things into context, and I'm sure we will discuss, inshallah, what's happening around the world, especially in Gaza. When you think about what's happening there, it really puts, I would say, things into context. Rather, I would say it puts life into context, because what we're seeing over there is a matter of life and death. It's not issues about, college fees or cars or work, and you're talking about life and death. And when it comes to life and death, to a human being, nothing is more dear to them than their life. But inshallah, I'm sure we'll speak more about this. But you know how it is, bro. When we have these podcasts, it's a case of just, catching up, seeing how things are, seeing where the discussion takes us. But, it goes without saying that we have to start off, and I have to get your views on what's happening in Gaza. Before then, a reminder for everyone listening and watching this episode. Definitely, if you're new to it, make sure, inshallah ta'ala, that you subscribe to the channel and that you like this video. So, getting into it, bro, in regards to Gaza, well, actually, I didn't even introduce you properly, bro. I mean, I'm sure people know who Brother Muttaqi is if they watched the previous podcasts that I've recorded with Brother Muttaqi. However, he's based in the United States of America, so the USA. So it's always good to get the perspective, as they say, over the pond. So in that respect, what's the mood like in the Muslim community, within the people that you're interacting about what's happening in Gaza? I mean, it's been going on for 4 months now, and I've personally seen, and you may even agree with me, or it may be different there, but I've seen emotions peak, and then unfortunately things sort of slow down a little in that respect, and people get back to their day-to-day business. But anyway, over to you. We've not spoken about Gaza. I've not spoken to you for quite a few months now. So what's your thoughts on the issue of Gaza? What's the mood back in the USA amongst the Muslim community and generally amongst the people that you're interacting with?
With Muslims, generally, American Muslims are nearly 100% pro-Palestine, pro-Gaza, anti-Israel, almost 100%. I have not met anyone who who openly supports Israel, who's Muslim, who claims to be a follower of the teachings of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So I've not seen anyone say that. However, I will say that I've heard one person who was Muslim, and this this is part of a certain narrative that goes beyond the Muslim community. And I didn't even mean to bring it here, but we're here now, so let's go and take it there. Okay, so now there's also the Black American community, most of whom are not Muslim. Generally speaking, most Black Americans would be, if not pro-Palestine, at least anti-Israel, because there's been historical animosity between al-Yahud and the Black community for years, for decades. There's been a historical animosity there. And that's,
Bro, here we're talking about non-Muslim Black community, yeah?
yes, yes, generally the general Black American community in general, not Muslims, general. And most of them are not Muslim. The vast majority of Black Americans are not Muslim. Most of them would be Christian or predominantly Christian, mostly Protestant Christians at that. Maybe a small minority of Catholics and even smaller minority of Muslims. The vast majority, however, are Christian, and there has been historical animosity between Bani Israel and Black Americans for a long time. That's if you read them, just read the autobiography of Malcolm X. It'll give you some context there. If you read his autobiography, he brings up a lot of things there. So that will always, I won't say it'll always be there, it'll be there a long time. However, you do also have certain parts of the Black American community which says that has nothing to do with us. We have our own problems here, and we're not going to take any sides on this one. And they say, well, that has nothing to do with us. We're going to say, I will say it's probably maybe about, I don't want to give numbers, maybe about 30%. Most Black Americans, like most Americans, aren't really familiar with the history of the situation. They just see certain things and say, okay, even though I don't know what's going on over there, this is wrong. And I know how they treated us, so I'm not. And so they have those issues out there. So you have that. Then you have a certain quote unquote intellectual, and I use intellectual in air quotes. These are those who we call them hoteps over here, but these are people who are really into the whole everyone is against us. And so they lump Palestinians in with the overall Arab slave trade narrative. Like everyone is racist against Black people, include Palestinians are racist, and that's not necessarily true. Now, of course, some Arabs do come over to the United States. Many of them do set up shops in Black communities. They sell pork, they sell alcohol, they sell cigarettes. Many of them do look down on the Black community within here, but those are people who are here. These are Arab Americans. These are not Palestinians, or they may be Palestinian Americans, but they're not Palestinians living in Gaza. This is a completely different mentality. Many of them who come here, not all, but many do adopt the overall, for lack of a better phrase, white supremacist mentality that dominates in many parts of the United States. And many of them do adopt that mentality. And they take that toxic relationship, for lack of a better phrase, here in the United States, and they put it on the people of Gaza, and they're not in the same situation. And it's very difficult to get over that. And that's, like I said, I believe is hopefully a smaller minority. So, and then you have those, and it's very, very small, who are lock in step with the liberal Democratic Party of the United States, not the liberal progressive part of the United States, the liberal Democratic Party, which says that Biden can do no wrong, anybody but Trump, blue no matter who, card-carrying Democrats, often part of the Black church, things like that. Some of them are pro-Israel because they believe that Israel or the Israelites, even these are not Israelites are the ancient Bani Israel, who say that the Israelites are the chosen people of God, and they accept that narrative. And so these are more of the evangelical Christian type. That's probably more, even though they're Black, they're more along the evangelical Christian types. And I actually have a sister, my biological sister, who feels that way. Now she's not Muslim. She was born before my father converted to Islam, so she was always raised in Christianity, and so and she didn't have really a great relationship with my father anyway. So, from what I understand, so she's never accepted Islam. And just a recent conversation I had with her very, very recently, I had to stop texting because it's going to go very, very badly. And she basically said, you know, they're getting what they deserve. They shouldn't attack God's people, stuff like that. But that's a minority. That's like one of the few Black people I've ever heard say something like that. And surprisingly, it came from my family at that. But whatever. But that's like I said, they do exist, so they're out there. As far as Black Muslims are concerned, by and large, and this is Muslims, I'm using the word Muslim loosely, so this also could include people from the Nation of Islam. I know theologically they may not be considered part of the Muslim fabric. They consider themselves Muslim. I get that. But still, they would generally be pro-Palestine and against Israel as well. That's what people follow Louis Farrakhan and so forth and so on. The general Sunni, or I'll say mainstream Muslim, that includes the few 12er Shiites who are Blacks. There's a 12er Shiite Black Muslim community, but the vast majority belong within the Sunni framework or the Sunni. But still, these Muslims will be by and large pro-Palestine. You can go on we're not segregated by race, of course, but if a masjid is set up in a certain community, most people who go to that masjid will be part of that community. So I live in Atlanta, which is predominantly Black anyway. It's like 60% Black anyway. So we already have a large Black population. And so masajids that are in the Black community will have predominantly Black populations. So that's just geography. That has nothing. Obviously, no one is banned from any masjid anywhere. We don't have those sort of things. So within those masajids, you go there, you'll hear some of the most fiery speeches or khutbahs against the genocidal monstrosity that's called the State of Israel. You'll hear some of the most fiery, because we do come from that Black church background that is, have you heard about Imam Siraj Wahaj, right?
Yeah, I've listened to some of his, he's
So you'll
very
hear,
eloquent.
right. So there's a lot of the fire and brimstone, for lack of a better phrase, pounding the podium. So you'll hear some very emotional khutbahs in favor of Gaza. I heard one just after this happened at Atlanta Masjid. It's probably the largest predominantly Black masjid in Atlanta, and it's called Atlanta Masjid. And the imam there, I made hajj with him actually, gave a very good khutbah. And trying not to get emotional here, because what he said, he's like, you people are worried about your jobs, you're worried about your money. I mean, because he's talking about people being afraid to post things online because their boss might see and stuff. So you're worried about that sort of thing. People are losing their lives, and it was absolutely completely changed my mentality, and made me, hopefully overcome any fear or any concern about posting things that are pro-Palestine
Subhanallah.
and pro-Gaza and pro the Muslims over there. And so I openly speak about it at work now. I know the mentality, I would say the atmosphere is more conducive now anyway, because younger people fortunately are more open to hearing alternative media, whereas, and by the way, my sister, who I said, well, once again, she's not Muslim, she's older than me, and I'm 47. So she's older than me, so she's really old school. And so she is she definitely has all of her information from the mainstream media. That's all that she knows. Whereas younger people aren't really listening to that stuff anymore, so they have a different mentality. But like I said, there's only been one Black person, or one Black Muslim that I've heard, and he was not pro-Israel by any means, but he took that mentality of, we have our own problems to deal with over here. So I wish peace for the Muslims of Gaza, but I can't really focus on that right now. I only heard one person, even that I kind of lost a little bit of respect for him about him with that one. So I'm gonna have to talk with him a little bit and try to straighten that one out. But that's the only person I've heard say anything even remotely, and that was more of a neutral statement, if anything else. And it wasn't even neutral. He definitely wasn't pro-Israel. He just was like, we got our own problems over here. As far as outside the Black community, as far as Muslims are concerned, generally I have not heard anyone any Muslim from, definitely no Muslim from the Arab community, absolutely not. That's, and even from the subcontinent, I have not heard anything like that. Uh, the closest masjid to my job, I generally go to after work on Fridays. I go to that masjid. It's almost, I've not heard anyone say anything, even remotely anti-Gaza or pro-Israel or anything like that. Not even close to it. It's nearly 100%. We finally got ijma on something. Nearly 100% in favor and supporting Gaza and Palestine and against Israel. I have not heard anything like that. So, by and large, the Muslim community in the United States is for Gaza and anti-Israel. Unfortunately, our government is something completely different, and we have very little control over that. We can't control where our taxes go, but we know where our taxes are used for. We know that. It's a difficult situation, whereas politically speaking, of course, you have those who say voting is haram and all that kind of stuff. I'm not going to get into that. But for those who do think it's okay to vote and who do believe it's okay to be involved in the political system, you know, I don't think Biden will get too many votes from Muslims. I think Muslims should take, for those who do think it's okay to vote, we should take even though we don't have the numbers to really push an election all the way or really push a single candidate in a certain direction, regardless of what political power we have. I'm almost certain that Biden will not have much of the Muslim community support in the United States come this November, unless he somehow is able to carve out a Palestinian state. I'm not saying I'm for the two-state solution, but that, if he can do that before November, which I think is nearly impossible, if he can do that before November, he might get Muslim support with that, because there are still a lot of Muslims who support the two-state solution. Whether that's right or wrong or not is another conversation, but there are many Muslims who support that and who see that as probably the best immediate alternative. But I don't think that's possible for him to do that. He might be able to get a ceasefire. He might be able to convince Israel to do a ceasefire, but there's still a long time to November, and a lot of things can change between now and then. So we'll see. But I think most Muslims are taking I'll say many Muslims at least are taking the mentality of we're probably going to sit this election out, and just try to show them that we do have some political power. We may not have as much as other lobbies or other groups, but we do have some political power. So I think a lot of people are probably taking the idea of either vote for a third-party candidate, because obviously we can't vote for the other side either. So the other side, the Trump goes, the MAGA people, that's even worse. Or no, at least just as bad. I don't know if it's even worse or not, because I don't know. I don't know if it will be worse. I can't trust any of these politicians. I have no idea what to say. If Trump will be worse or better than Biden, but none of them are really for us. So it may be best to go on. I'm sorry, just sit it
Yeah,
out. Go on.
yeah. I think in regards to the elections, obviously it's not really somewhat to go too deep into, but I'll just from my point of view, there's similar things happening here in regards to where you have Muslims now who are talking about the Muslim vote and independence parties being set up. The thing with that is obviously I hold the opinion that actually participating in the system is not allowed anyway. Okay, for various reasons, and that in itself is something from the Sharia point of view. But even from a reality point of view, I think where people are naive, and I would say this is because the issue isn't with the politicians. The issue is with the system. The whole system is what allows these politicians to do what they are doing, right? So even if you were not to look at it from an Islamic point of view, if by partaking in the system, you're not really going to achieve anything because the system has mechanisms there to protect it. So, and another thing, what happens is because people then start rallying towards this as something which is a practical action that they can be doing to support the Muslims in Gaza and in Palestine, then it kind of detracts them from talking about other things, talking about the actual solution. But like you said, to be honest with you, I don't see much being achieved between now and November. and not because of entirely out of the hands of Biden. We know that there's a disagreement in regards to policy, where the Americans have maintained the two-state solution as being the solution to ease the issue within the Muslim world, within the Middle East, from their point of view, in regards to what their strategic vision is, which would then integrate the illegal state of Israel within the region. They want to do that. However, we know the actions of Netanyahu and his religious right, and just to be honest with you, it's not even them. Just the Zionist um, mindset is one where they want to take it all regardless. They don't want a two-state. So I think you've got this issue here. However, it's not stopping Biden from sending missiles upon missiles and billions upon billions there, because ultimately, like Biden said many years ago and reiterated recently, that Israel is the best $3 billion investment that America makes. If there wasn't an Israel, then America would have to invent one. So the strategic interests of having this aircraft carrier in the heart of the Muslim lands is something which benefits the United States, and they're not going to show the world, even though they disagree with the sort of policies and they disagree with the direction that the Netanyahu government's going. They're not going to show the world that there's any disagreements, or that at any point they would remove their support for this illegal entity. So hence why you get this rebuke to a certain extent. Well, I think too many people have died. Far too many people have died. However, as you know very well, I think it was $14 billion that are being signed off, further $14 billion. So, this is when you're talking out of two parts of your face, and ultimately, hopefully, that the Muslims in America, that they can see this, that even if he was to somehow achieve anything of note that people considered an achievement anyway, that they shouldn't forget the 4 or 5 months that of what happened. These people clearly said, we stand with Israel. Israel has a right to defend itself. They continue to say that. They continue to say that even now, after almost 100,000 people have been either killed or injured or still under rubble, and it continues. And if this latest phase of what they're planning in Rafah, if that goes through, then who knows what that number is going to be. And these people have stood with them shoulder to shoulder, and Muslims shouldn't forget this, especially in America. They shouldn't forget this, and I'd be surprised, and it would really show naivety upon the Muslim base if they were to then forget all this and then think, oh well, Biden or the Democrats have achieved anything. But okay, moving from there, we spoke about well, we chatted a little when I sort of invited you on the show, and you mentioned to me at the time, and you didn't go into detail, but it was kind of a unique angle, and I'm quite intrigued to hear what your opinion is on this. And you mentioned something about the the similarities or the comparison between the people of Gaza, between them and the people of Bosnia and the people of Afghanistan. And why I find that intriguing is because, to be honest with you, what does the people of Gaza have to do with the people of Bosnia and the people of Afghanistan? I don't even see where there's even a comparison to be made. So, like you said, we'll speak about it on the show. So, I just want to get your thoughts on this, because it does sound really interesting, and I want to see where you're going with this.
Well, I use those two. Well, first, I'm not making dua for peace in Gaza. I'm making dua for victory for the Palestinians. So I'm asking Allah to give the Palestinians victory over their oppressors. So that's my hope, is that inshallah the Palestinians will be victorious. I don't know how it's going to look or what that victory will bring, and we can only hope that or pray that Allah will answer our duas. But I'm asking that Allah will give victory to the Muslims of Palestine.
Amen.
So I mean, so my assumption is you assume the best of Allah that He will answer our dua and my dua, and so I hope that the Palestinians will have victory over their oppressors. And how that's going to happen, I don't know. So assuming that victory will come to the Muslims of Palestine, I just want to compare that to perhaps the most recent victories, I'm using air quotes here, victories of Muslims over non-Muslims in recent history. And there haven't been too many. And the two that we have are Afghanistan and a couple of years ago, 2021, I believe. And I know you said that's not really a victory, and I would like to hear your thoughts on that as well. And Bosnia, and that also was not much of a victory as well, all things considered. So I was wondering, what would victory look like for Palestine, whether it's a political victory, military victory, however victory comes. In 20 years ago, when the Taliban 1.0 was overthrown by the United States and its coalition, occupied Afghanistan, set up a puppet government, all those sort of things, everyone thought the Taliban were done. There was just a matter of going through the mountains, mopping up the remaining resistance movements, resistance of Taliban resistance pockets, mop that up, and the United States will bring democracy to Afghanistan once and for all. 20 years later, Taliban 2.0 are back, and they have they have improved in many ways over the original Taliban. In fact, that they are better communicators now. They are more open to integration with working with other countries. They're not as insular as they were before. They have some English-speaking representatives, which is a big step in getting their message across, even though they're still hampered by many other issues. But the point of the fact is that in 2002, I believe, when the Taliban were toppled and they had the lawyer Jirga, and they began setting up the puppet government for the Islamic Republic of Afghanistan, that everyone thought the Taliban were gone, and it was against an overwhelming force. Now, of course, many other things are different. The United States was an external power, whereas Israel is right there. So it's not saying there's a big difference right there. Afghanistan is mostly rural, whereas Gaza is very, very urban. There is a much smaller. It's roughly this, it's a smaller population, but condensed in a much smaller area than it is in Afghanistan. So the people of Afghanistan, there are many different ethnic groups, is nowhere near as homogeneous as the Muslims of Palestine. Muslims of Palestine generally speak the same language, generally follow the same culture, different economic situation between the West Bank and Gaza and Arab Israelis. There's different situations in that respect, but still they're much more homogeneous than they are in Afghanistan, not as much ethnic divisions as in Afghanistan. So there are differences. I'm just really speaking of the actual victory in and of itself. And with Bosnia, also came out to be a victory. It's about 30 years ago now, but it did come out to be a victory. But the differences are that with Bosnia, the Bosnian Muslims tried to work with the system. They tried to work with the United Nations, the United States, tried to work within the global framework, where the Taliban was like, forget all that. We're doing our own thing, and we're going against the global framework. And so ultimately, so I'm only really talking about the victories, not necessarily, assuming that Palestine will inevitably eventually have victory, however that comes, and however that final victory is. Well, it won't be the final victory, because final victory is with Isa alayhi salam. But you know what I mean. Whatever that victory is. However that may come, it doesn't, I'm just talking about really the victory and the victory in and of itself at the end of the day. And so how will the Palestinians do it? Will they go completely against the global framework that exists right now and do their own thing? Or like as Bosnia did, in which case I think they'll be weakened like Bosnia was. What many people don't realize is that even the Bosnian War lasted for roughly 3 years, from 1992 to 1995, roughly 3 years. They eventually signed the peace agreement and everything with the Serbs and all. But what people don't realize is that towards the end of the actual fighting, the Bosniaks, the Muslim Bosniaks, were starting to win. They were actually, even despite all the things going against them, the world basically keeping them from getting weapons, while the Serbs had access to the entire Serbian military, which was able to ship them weapons and everything. Towards the end, the Bosniaks were starting to win. For one thing, black market weapons were starting to filter in. Um, it, uh, the United States, even though they were part of that global framework, one of the few good things that the United States did during this war is that they pressured even though it was, of course, for U.S. political interests. I'm not saying this is any sort of goodwill thing. It was for U.S. political interests, but for once, U.S. political interests aligned with with Muslims' interests. And in this case, the United States pressured it wasn't the EU yet. They weren't founded yet at that time, but I think it was the European Economic Community is what it was called, which is mostly UK, France, and Germany, a little bit of Italy, and also the UN pressured them into pushing for peace settlements. And there's also the United States kind of turned a blind eye to a lot of the black market guns and weapons coming into Bosnia for the Bosniaks, particularly in Sarajevo, not throughout the entire country, but mostly in Sarajevo. And that allowed the Bosniaks to start turning the momentum. And once they started turning the momentum started changing. Oh, hey, we got a peace treaty, we got a ceasefire, let's go ahead and start talking peace. And then they find it, but unfortunately. And so what came out of that is that Bosnia came out to be a very weak country as far as politically. The Muslims had to now share Bosnia almost with only a 1% majority with the Serbs and a little bit less with the Croats. But Croatia had its own. Croats still have Croatia, so they have their nation. The Serbs have Serbia, so they have their nation. Bosnia had to share it. And even within that, has a very weak central government. And so each of the I think they call them cantons within Bosnia, these religious, not religious, more really ethnic communities or ethnic regions within Bosnia have a lot of autonomy from the central government. And so, yes, the killing stopped, but the central government now, or the government of Bosnia, is extremely weak. And so that was the downfall, or the downside of going through the system. Whereas, however, Bosnia can do business deals with the rest of the world, the West included. They can participate in global affairs and all this sort of things. Afghanistan, on the other hand, the Taliban, they did not work with the system. So they have almost complete control of the entire nation of Afghanistan, except for, once again, the Panjshir Valley, I believe, is still resisting, just like the Northern Alliance was with Taliban 1.0. Still that resistance is still there. But generally speaking, Afghanistan, the Taliban control the entire country, most of the nation at least, but they have very limited ability to interact with the global community. They have to interact with, at best, China and Russia, and those have their own problems as well. Even much of the Muslim world doesn't even interact with them. I don't know if any Muslim country recognizes the Taliban or Afghanistan as a sovereign nation just yet. I'm not sure. Maybe Yemen.
I don't think there is. I don't think there is.
Yeah, not even Pakistan. I mean, whereas even the Taliban 1.0, Saudi Arabia and Pakistan at least recognize that their sovereignty as a sovereign nation, and nobody does now, not even Muslim countries. So that's the downside of going it alone, is that they're going to have a long road to try to receive recognition and work with, which is necessary in this day and age. I'm not saying it's necessary to work within the system, but it is necessary to have international relationships with other countries in this day and age. So those are the things I was hoping maybe discuss and flesh out. Not necessarily the geography of these three nations are completely different. Bosnia is a mountainous country, but lots of greenery, many different ethnic groups, many different religions. Afghanistan is very mountainous, but many different ethnic groups, but generally one religion. Palestine and Gaza is completely different, very urban community. So that's what I wanted to discuss, or see how, when victory comes to the Muslims of Palestine, not what it's going to look like, how would they get it? Will they get it by working outside the system, we're working within the system. To me, working within the system hasn't worked out too well so far. So that has got them in a very bad situation. I'm not trying to poke fun at them any means, but working within the system has gotten them, the PA, the Palestinian Authority, is by most accounts, Israeli lapdog. They're not, their lives are better than the Muslims of Gaza. Even before all this happened, the Palestinians in the West Bank, their lives generally were better, but they're still humiliated. They're still treated like, like crap. That's not the four-letter word I want to use, but they're still treated like crap. But they were just a little bit better than the Palestinians in Gaza. Same thing with the Arab Israelis. Yes, Arab Israelis or Arabs who accept Israeli citizenship, their lives are even better than the Palestinians who live in the West Bank. But by all accounts, from everything I've heard, they're still treated like second-class citizens. Maybe not legally, but socially, and that's what really matters. They're still treated like second-class citizens. They still are under suspicion from the government, and so they're not. They don't even enjoy the same legal rights as Israeli citizens or citizens who are part of Bani Israel. So
yeah, no, really interesting, bro. Really interesting. I think the important thing was key here. We're speaking about victory. We're speaking about Muslims. I think to have this discussion, it's really important that before we have this discussion, we put on the lens, we put on the specs of Islam, and we look through those lens. We look through the lens of Islam. What is victory in this? What does victory in Islam mean? Right? I think it's really important because I recorded a video, and if I remember, I'll add the link somewhere here. About it was a podcast about free Palestine. That statement of free Palestine, because it's very popular. But however, what does a free Palestine look like? Okay,
right.
If the Zionists were to give a two-state solution to the Muslims of Palestine, and then they had another 58th Arab nation, secular Arab nation, is this freedom? Is this victory? So we have to look at it from the lens of Islam. And when we do that, and I'll just give you my 2 pence or 2 cents, is that when we look at, and you'll know this very well, because obviously you're a historian and you've actually recorded podcasts on this very topic, that Palestine was never a nation. It's never been a nation. It was a part of the wilaya of Bilad al-Sham. Okay? So if we look at the issue of a nation state, first of all, Islam is totally against nation states. The concept of nation states is alien to Islam. So victory for Muslims in Palestine wouldn't be another nation state if you look at it through the Islamic lens. Okay, we know that the solution in regards to what's happening in Palestine or anywhere else, in the fact, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that, fight those who have driven you out of your homes, right? We know, and this is a fact, and it's agreed upon by the four major madhahib, that if Muslim land is occupied, then jihad fi sabilillah is how the Muslims repel the occupiers. I.e., this is defensive. It's a defensive battle to retake what's been taken from you. And if those Muslims are not capable of doing this, then the duty falls on the Muslims who are surrounding them. And then if they're not, and it extends, and some scholars say that it may come to a stage when every single Muslim in the world has this obligation on his neck, right? So Islamically, that's the solution. So if we look at it from that point of view, Brother Muttaqi, when we look at Palestine, we shouldn't look at it as a nation state. We should look at it as a land which is occupied, and a special land. It's a waqf, which was which was given to the ummah. This land belongs to the entire ummah. It's different to the other lands that were conquered by the Muslims. This is a waqf, and this was given to the Muslims by Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anhu when this was conquered. So if we look at what victory looks like in Palestine, victory from a Muslim point of view is A, the removal of the occupation, B, the implementation of Islam, and C, that this piece of land is now connected back to the Muslim Ummah, connected back to the Muslim lands. And when you think of it in that respect, I think we do an injustice on the Muslims in Palestine when we look towards them to liberate themselves. If we look at the Crusades, it wasn't the people of Palestine, the people of Jerusalem, who liberated Jerusalem. It was those Muslims who sorted out their differences, who addressed some of the issues that were the disunity in the Muslims, who then were, capable enough to go and deal with the matter. But it was people from outside who came to resolve the issue. So I'm looking purely from an Islamic lens here. That's what, in my opinion, what victory would look like in Palestine. Certainly not a two-state, because a two-state solution is so dangerous. And what Muslims don't understand, and they're trying to be pragmatic, the day that the Palestinians sign off, the day they sign off that land, and that means legitimately now that the Zionist settlers are the legitimate owners of that land, you might as well forget about it. You've signed it off, you've given it away, right? And that's why you probably heard recently the Zionist state has always had an issue with the UNRWA. Why? Because UNRWA, which was set up in between 1949 and 1950, was there as a UN mechanism to support the refugees. And then later on, those refugees died and their children came about, but they are still recognized as refugees. And a big issue that the Zionist settler state has, it doesn't want to recognize refugees, because refugees always have a right of return. They're a refugee, and they have a right to go back to where they were made a refugee, right? So anyway, I'll get your thoughts on this, but from an Islamic point of view, this is the way I see the issue of Palestine. That this matter, I would say that in fact the Muslims in Palestine have done far more than many other people in the past who were occupied. The people have resisted; they are still resisting. However, what are their capabilities? Who are they up against? But they're still resisting. But for us to now think that actually the Palestinians are going to solve this issue themselves, this is an injustice on them. The way we should see it is that, in fact, they're on the front line for the rest of the Ummah. So rather than supporting them, if we are abandoning them and allowing them and some of their corrupt institutions like the Palestinian Authority and people like Mahmoud Abbas to sign off this piece of land which belongs to the entire Ummah, then this is not really the rest of the Ummah outside of Palestine playing their part. In regards to Bosnia, in regards to Afghanistan, again, like you mentioned, the issue in Bosnia, this wasn't something which was a victory for them. However, the killing stopped. The situation, as you know very well, because you recorded a podcast, a whole series on this, that things are looking a bit shaky there at the moment. Well, they were 6-7 months ago. There's people who are talking about, are we going to go back to the 90s, right? In regards to Afghanistan, we might differ in regards to a Taliban victory. However, one thing that cannot be taken out of the equation is that the people of Afghanistan, namely Taliban, but not just Taliban, the huge amount of Muslims that support them, they did not give up. They resisted, and eventually, because they knew they're from there, the invaders are going to have to go back one day. And ultimately, okay, there was a time when the Americans chose it's best to leave. However, They never gave up. They never accepted what was being, the ideology that was being shoved down their throat. They never accepted that. And ultimately, they never gave up. Okay, they became a little bit pragmatic, and Taliban were always kind of pragmatic. However, ultimately, talking about in regards to the example you gave, they never really worked within that system. And Alhamdulillah, if that's what victory is, then certainly they didn't become secular, and that in itself, in my opinion, is a victory itself. So those are just my thoughts, really. I don't know what you think on that.
Well, the as far as connecting Palestine to the Ummah again, that would require a complete change of the current world order, and that would require or at least some sort of rearranging of the current world order, particularly within the Muslim world, maybe not in the non-Muslim world, but particularly within the Muslim world. I don't think that's necessarily impossible. I think some of these Muslim nation states, especially those in the immediate area, which is of course Egypt, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, Syria, and Iraq. Those are the maybe Turkey, but especially those that I just mentioned. Lebanon to a lesser extent as well. Yeah, Lebanon too. There is, I think, a lot of internal possibility. I'll say some internal possibility. I don't say a lot. Some internal possibility of a change in that system, but militarily and not necessarily politically. Politically, these nations have to use military to maintain the status quo. The nations I just mentioned, they have to use their military, their armed forces to maintain their power and to maintain their status quo internally. For there to be a change in that, there'll have to be either some enlightened leader, and none of the nations I mentioned currently seem to have any sort of enlightened leader that wants to go in that route, or an internal movement, which is basically a revolution that overthrows the government, or because none of these nations are republics or democracies where you can vote somebody out and put somebody else in who doesn't, maybe Turkey, but not Iraq too, I guess, but I don't think it's going to happen over there. So it will have to be an overthrow of the current regimes. I'm not saying it couldn't happen.
Let me just make it easier in regards to what I mean. And this is probably something which I should have mentioned. This can only happen, and it's really good that you mentioned about there has to be a dramatic change in the world order, and especially in that region. This can only happen when the Khilafah is established, and when you have a sincere leadership, Islamic leadership, who is working for Islam and has now broken the shackles which is holding back the resources of the Muslims, whether it's the military, whether it's the resources like raw materials or whatever. But this is only going to happen when we have a sincere leadership, when Islam is being established, and that land will be then liberated. This is the only way it's not going to happen by a secular nation. It's not going to happen by these puppets who are actually and truly the real IDF, right? We see the treachery of Jordan from the time of the Nakba is there open to see. We see that thousands and thousands have died, being made shaheed, yet the Saudis are still groveling over normalization. We see how the Houthis caused a bit of an issue by blockading the Red Sea, and then the likes of the UAE, Jordan, Saudi Arabia set up a land bridge to bypass that blockade and supply the entity, illegal state of Israel. So these rulers are there for a reason. They were put there, from the ruins of the Ottomans, and they have always served themselves and they served their paymasters. So that dramatic change that's going to happen is going to happen when these people have been removed. And this is not something I'm saying is going to happen overnight, and it's not something which is but at the same time, it's not something which is impossible, because we already see amongst the masses there is a sentiment where Muslims do want change, not just in case of they want the violence to stop in Palestine. Generally, they do want change in certain places, not all, in certain places. However, these rulers are suppressing this desire for change, right? So we see this. So this is not something which is impossible. In fact, this is something which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has commanded us, that do you, that Allah will not change your condition until you work to change this yourself. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that, if you were to, if you were to act according to the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, pray, perform the salah, give the zakat, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give you security, He will give you power, He will give you these things. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that you're the best nation sent to mankind because you enjoy in the good, forbid the evil. So what we see from these ayats, and many, many other ayats, is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promises the Muslims victory. However, these promises have it's like a deal. They have like a clause in them that if you do this, then we will give you victory. And one example, really, if you think about it, is look at the Battle of Badr. We see the Battle of Badr. The Muslims stood there with the Messenger Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and they were steadfast, and they overcame the odds. They overcame all odds. We see Battle of Uhud, slightly different now. The Muslims were winning that battle, but because some Muslims disobeyed just one command from the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that whatever happens, you archers do not move from this spot. From the jaws of victory, they ended up in a defeat. Why? Because of disobedience. So what we see is that we see this very easy formula that if Muslims are away from Islam, then they will ultimately, it will result in humiliation and it will result in the problems we see. But if Muslims are come closer to Islam, come closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they want to follow the commands, they want to live according to this, then Allah will give you victory, Allah will give you power, Allah will give you authority. So from an Islamic point of view, it's not impossible. This is the methodology of change. However, the onus is on who? It's on the Muslims. Do you want your situation to change, or are you happy with your life, just making businesses and just, making the money and living it large? If you want change, then you have to act accordingly. So that's what I would say. It's not impossible. In fact, it's very possible. However, we need to go back and look at it from the lens of Islam, look at it from our history, rather than looking at it from in today's times and look how powerful the United States is and how powerful this is and how powerful that is, and think, well, it's impossible. The only way we can do this is using pragmatic means, is by being involved in the system. The reality is, and I know this may sound easy the way I'm saying it, and it's not easy at all, but the reality is that the current world order needs to be turned on its head. Who's going to do that? Allahu Alam. Whoever's going to be that person. But I tell you something now, bro. The same way, hundreds of years later, we still speak about Salahuddin al-Ayyubi, we still speak about Nuruddin Zengi, we'll still speak about Tariq bin Ziyad and all these people. Those same people that are going to change this situation, they will be remembered in the same light as the Ansar, as those people, their legacies will be set. But the question is, who wants to take that responsibility on? And that's what it boils down to. Until we don't work for that change, then ultimately the situation isn't going to change. And anything we think might be victory, a two-state, the violence stopping, a ceasefire, we will be kidding ourselves to believing that we're anywhere close to a victory.
Now, I do agree with what you mentioned earlier, that the two-state solution would definitely give a strong case to Israel for its legitimacy, because their position will be like, we gave you what you want. Now, this is now accepted. I do agree with that. And again, I'm not saying I agree with I don't think a two-state solution is even possible anyway. Not with West Bank and Gaza, just physically. And I take and this is, and I gotta give a caveat here. I'm not saying I'm very much a real politic, but I do try to look at things in the current situation, compare them to historical events, and see what's the next best steps forward. So in reality, I don't think a two-state solution. First of all, the West Bank has these Israeli settlements that are like cities, basically. They call them settlements, but these are not like little tents. These are cities. These are essentially small cities within the West Bank. And for there to be any sort of true state, and I understand you don't like the concept of nation state. I'm not talking about that. Even if they were to have a true state of Palestine, I don't have a true state of Palestine with a bunch of mini uh, many Israeli cities all scattered throughout. It's not going to work out. They will
It's not
have to
possible, bro.
dismantle all of those. Yeah, and also there's a physical distance between Gaza and the West Bank. There's a good 25 miles of open desert between them, and how that's going to work out is inconceivable, really. So I do understand that I don't even think a two-state solution, even if I was 100% for it, I'm not really for it, I just don't see the practicality of it. So, but
let me ask you a
one thing
question, Brother Muttaqi. Let me ask you a question.
Mhm.
You're coming from the point of view of practicality and stuff like this. As a Muslim, Islamically, do you not see a problem with Islamically Muslims signing off Muslim land to non-Muslims, signing off, like
It's already been
giving
done. It's already been
Muslims?
done.
Go
It's
on.
already been done. The Palestinian Authority has already recognized Israel. Yasser Arafat recognized
Yeah,
Israel.
but forget them.
So,
I'm talking about from an Islamic
but
point of view. But forget them.
all right,
From an Islamic point of
right,
view,
right.
from an Islamic
Mhm.
point of view, are Muslims allowed to give Muslim land to the non-Muslims to sign this off? And there's a ijma. There's a ijma across that this is not allowed, and that's normal land. When we're talking about Palestine, it has a special status of it being a waqf. It's going to be the property of the Muslims until the day of Yom Al-Qiyamah. So the reason why I'm just asking you this is because, yeah, we can talk about practicality and not, because in reality, what you're saying is completely correct. Even if they acknowledge a two-state tomorrow, they are saying that this state can't have an army, it can't have this, it can't have that. It's not a state at all. The only way it's a state is the way those letters STATE that are written on a piece of paper is not a state. But what's important, and I want to really make this point to the people listening as well, is I don't think we even need to go down this route of whether it's going to be a state, whether it's not a state, whether it's practical or not, from an Islamic point of view, and not from the Palestinian Authority, because they are not the representatives. And even if every single Palestinian agreed to give away that land, this is Muslim land. It's not Palestinian land. This belongs to the Ummah, right? So the point I'm saying here is that from an Islamic point of view, it's an ijma among all the scholars that you can't sign this land off. So it doesn't really matter whether it was practical or not, or whether West Bank or Gaza were connected or not. This is something which, as Muslims, we can't entertain, and I think that's really important to mention, because otherwise, if they give a better offer and make a motorway, a highway between Gaza and the West Bank, and say, well, look, now it's connected, it still wouldn't be allowed. Do you see my point?
I understand your point. I think that's too rigid of a way to think, though. I have to say that while I do understand that, I do agree that the Muslims shouldn't just sign away land. And in reality, when you're having war, there's always negotiations. And so even if they turn it into the Palestinians will have to conquer the entire nation, or the Muslims have to conquer the entire nation, and then allow the Bani Israel to stay there and pay jizya, or they can work out some sort of negotiation on the jizya. That is the solution for that to go down that route. But I also don't think that when you're dealing with in warfare and politics, rigidity can be a difficult thing. And I think keeping that framework of we can't do this and we can't do that, it doesn't give you much flexibility. And sometimes you have to be flexible in certain things. It all
But
depends on what you're trying to do.
bro,
And it's hard.
no,
I
sorry,
mean,
I have to push back a little because
mm,
as Muslims, we can be flexible in the matters that we are allowed to be flexible in. There's certain things which are just the way they are, right? And
I mean,
that's why
Salahuddin signed peace negotiations with the Crusaders. When after he defeated the Crusaders, he didn't take over all of Palestine.
no, he
He
didn't.
allowed them, many parts of it, Crusaders were still there. And so he had Jerusalem, yes. And what I'm
But
saying is that sometimes you have to be flexible if you,
no. Maybe you
not,
misunderstood. Maybe you misunderstood me. What
okay.
I'm talking about here, I'm not talking about treaties. I'm not
Mhm.
talking about Hudna. I'm not talking about treaties. I'm talking about, when you gave the example of Salahuddin al-Ayyubi, he knew he's taken Quds, right? He doesn't maybe have the capability or doesn't have the energy anymore. It's probably taken too much out of him that he can't liberate the full land. And he made a treaty with them of non-violence, for example, right? The Messenger Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam made treaty of Hudaybiyah with the Quraysh. We're not talking about treaties which have a time duration. When you are writing off that piece of land, you're giving it away. You have no ownership over the land anymore. That's not a treaty, bro. There's a difference there. Treaties is not a problem as long as they have a time scale on them. Of course, like you said, in war you have to have treaties, right? Here we're talking about you are giving permanently a permanent treaty that, okay, this is the border now. This belongs to you. This belongs to us. Now, if you can give me an example from history or show me from within the fiqh or even any opinion from scholars that say this is allowed, I would be baffled because I've looked into this. I've spoken to people of knowledge on this matter, and they've said, look, this is an ijma that this is not allowed. Do you understand? Do you see the difference there now? Maybe that's cleared up because I'm not saying you can't have treaties. I'm saying you cannot permanently sign off that land and give it away. Like it's not yours anymore. That's
Now,
what I'm saying.
regarding Salahuddin, I'm not aware of the agreement he made with the Crusaders after Richard the Lionheart returned to England, and the main hostilities between the two sides were pretty much over. I don't know that there was a time limit on the treaties between him and the other Crusader-held lands still within Palestine. There were Crusader-held lands still within that region.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
And I don't know that there's a time bound within it, but he did agree that we're not going to fight anymore, and that this is the. And as far as I understand, he agreed that the lands that they held were their land, and the lands the Muslims held were the Muslims' land, and that was that. And it remained that way for a while until eventually his descendants started fighting them again, and eventually the Mamluks, I believe, the ones who eventually chased the Crusaders out completely.
Yeah.
That
So
was
I
long
mean,
after.
so that kind of, that kind of gives a bit of an indication the fact that, you know, people later who then had capabilities to remove them, they removed them because had those agreements been binding, then those the Tripoli and all these places, I can't remember where they were still where they still were. These kingdoms or these territories would have still remained, but they didn't. So he made treaties. He would have made treaties, but they would never have been permanent. He would never have accepted that the Crusaders, the Franks, are going to be living in the Muslim world forever. This is unimaginable. This is unimaginable because this goes against the Sharia rule. This is my point. This is what I'm saying to you. So it's somewhat for both of us to look into a bit more, the treaties and stuff like this. But from what I can argue is that, and this is why I say, bro, is when I have this discussion or when when I'm speaking to people or people are speaking to me, one thing that's very important as from a Muslim point of view is, yes, we have flexibility, but the lens that we look through has to be from an Islamic lens. So if there's flexibility, That flexibility is there because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has allowed there to be that flexibility. He's given you an option now where if you're in this certain situation, if somebody's about to kill you, then you can say you're not a Muslim as long as you don't believe it in the heart. If you're about to die, then you can eat haram food, because it's halal for you because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you the ruqsa, He's given you that permission to do it in that particular situation. So wherever there's flexibility to do something which is normally not allowed, it has to be, it comes from Islam. Otherwise, we would just make things up. And that's why I'm saying to you is just say now we don't have this rigid mentality and we look at it from a pragmatic, realistic point of view, then the outcome would always never benefit Muslims. And there's a famous saying of Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu that Islam gave us izzah, gave us honor. And if we look towards anything other than Islam, for izzah, we will find only but humiliation. So I think the point I'm making is that in areas where we can be flexible, we should do. But there's certain things which are beyond our scope of trying to rationalize or trying to make permissible because they're kind of like dead set. So that's my only issue, see, and that's why it may seem black and white, it may seem rigid, right? This is what I believe, and this is what I stand for. Ultimately, I look back at examples from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and one example that comes to mind is when the Quraysh within Mecca offered him leadership, offered him ruling. They may try to make a deal with him. You rule for 1 year, we will rule for 1 year, and so on and so forth. And if we were allowed to have that flexibility, you would think to yourself that, okay, wait a minute, already this man is generally loved within Mecca. He's from the noblest tribe. If the Quraysh give him 1 year to freely rule and rule and do not be an obstacle in him doing his dawah, in 1 year, forget 1 year, in 1 month, everyone in Mecca will be a Muslim. It's a great offer from a pragmatic point of view. However, he never took it. So this is what I'm trying to say. Now, whether we want to call that black and white, whether we want to call that too rigid, Allahu alim, but that's the sort of position I'm coming from.
I do understand that. I also know that whenever there's actual war involved, people often people become a lot more flexible depending on their position. And I understand you're saying that this is, and I want to make it clear, I'm not supporting a two-state solution.
I know that.
I'm not supporting a two-state solution, and I'm not even sure what victory will look like. I also don't think the situation doesn't have much correlation. The Palestine-Israel situation, the war, conflict, genocide, however people get bent out of shape over the names or the phrases we use. But the point is that this didn't really exist in the time of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You didn't have, the closest you had were the pagan Quraysh who took over the homes and the lands of the Muslims of the Muhajirun who moved to Medina. That's the closest you have to that. And it is true, even with the Treaty of Hudaybiyah, there was a limited time, and once they broke it, then all bets were off. That's probably the closest you have to that. As far as Salahuddin al-Ayyubi, as much as we love Salahuddin, we also got to remember, he wasn't a companion, and he definitely wasn't a prophet. So definitely wasn't a prophet. He wasn't a companion. He was, compared to us, he would probably be considered a sheikh or a scholar compared to us, because he had a good amount of Islamic knowledge. But still, that's probably the closest we have to compare in real terms of an outside European force conquering Palestine and the Muslim road back to taking it back. So I want to acknowledge that I don't know what victory will look like. I don't know, but the thing is that I'm always been concerned about we can't do this until we have that. And I don't like I've always been against the idea we have to wait for the Mahdi. We can't do this until this. We can't do it until we have the Khalifa. I don't think we necessarily need the Khilafah to attain victory. It may make it easy, but we lost Jerusalem when we had the Khilafah. The Ottoman Empire was fully intact, and the Khalifa was there. And when Salahuddin conquered Jerusalem from the Crusaders, yes, the Abbasid Khalifa existed, but it was extremely weak. It had almost no authority. It was really just a rubber stamp. It had very, very little authority. So I don't think that having the caliphate back or the Khilafah back is necessary for victory for the Muslims of Gaza or Palestine, I should say. And even with that, this is not necessarily the end of the story. That's the thing, is that it's easy to look at the framework of our current lives, our 75 to 80-year lifespan, however amount of time Allah gives us, to think that this is it and there's nothing after that. Things ebb and flow, and things will change, and there's no guarantee that the Yawm al-Qiyamah is going to come simply because either the Muslims retake Palestine or don't retake Palestine, or that's it. Because who knows how much longer we have and how many times this land will switch hands between Muslims, non-Muslims, or over the next thousands and thousands of years. Who knows? 500 years ago, no one thought we would be in this situation. So 500 years from now, it will be something completely different, most likely. And none of us who are alive today will be here to see it. So I don't want to think this is the end game and this is all there is to it. We have to, and after that, roll credits into the movie. So there may be, only Allah knows how much longer we have in this world, but there will be changes going on. So even if, however victory may come, and that's the thing, I don't know how none of us know how victory is going to come. I don't think it's, I really don't like the idea of we have to have a caliphate though.
Let me qualify that.
Okay.
I'm not saying that I'm not saying that there has to be, and the reason why I'm saying that is because if tomorrow the Egyptian army went in and liberated Palestine, which is capable of doing, it could be done. So I'm not saying that. I think one thing that I need to emphasize is, and I think we'll probably be in agreement here, is that an occupation, and especially a violent apartheid, extreme occupation as we're seeing, can only be undone through physical means. I mean, it's not going to happen in the ballot box. This is going to be something that has to happen. I think that's obvious. I think everyone can see that. So now, whether it's the armies of the Islamic Khilafah, or whether it's some battalions in some of the Muslim lands who think, you know what, we've had enough, and we go and do what they need to do, who knows? However, the point I'm trying to say is that it has to be done physically. And the only reason why I mentioned the Khilafah here is because of the stranglehold and the shackles that these regimes have over their people and their military. If we're expecting these militaries to move independently, that is kind of wishful thinking. And if we expect these rulers to actually wake up on the right side of history, and I think that's really highly unlikely as well. And the reason why I mentioned the Khilafah is because that's the only sincere leadership I can think of which would have the interests of Islam and Muslims truly at heart, right? But the point of victory, when you talk about victory to me is the liberation of the entirety of the land. And this isn't going to happen by America giving this land. It's not going to happen through the UN. It's not going to happen through the ICJ. And it's not going to happen through corrupt institutions like the Palestinian Authority. It's going to have to happen from someone who is willing to fight for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's what I'm saying. Now, Whoever that is, who knows? But the victory can't be a two-state, or the victory can't be a one-state and staying as it is. No, the fundamental problem is what? It's not even people dying. It's not apartheid. This is not a humanitarian issue. The core fundamental issue is it's an occupation. People are occupied. And when people are occupied, what is the solution for them? Is to remove the occupation, and then people go back to their homes. Until that doesn't happen, how can anything be classed a victory? That's what I'm saying. So you're right. Well, you're 100% right that you can't say I'm just going to wait around and wait for the Khalifa to turn up. No, every Muslim has the responsibility within their scope, whatever they can do, whether it's talking with my brother Muttaqi on the podcast, whether it's speaking to your family, speaking about the history of the land, making sure the next generation know the true narrative. That's you're playing your part, you know. But I totally agree with you. If somebody was to just sit think nothing can happen till the Khalifa comes, then there's no difference in my eyes than that person saying we can't do anything until the Mahdi arrives. I don't see a difference. So I hope that qualified that. I wasn't saying that.
Okay, that's fair. That sounds good. So I forgot what we were talking about before. Now, regarding, I guess it's just maybe, perhaps we have a difference of what's considered flexible or not. I mean, as far as, I mean, I'm reluctant to take a zero-sum game where the only outcome is I win, you lose. And at some point in time, this will lead to open warfare at some point. I do believe that this will, I agree with you on that. At some point in time, there will be open warfare. I don't know if, you know, who knows what can happen. There's also many things that can happen, and often things happen that we weren't expecting. So Mahmoud Abbas dies tomorrow. It could be, he's an old man. It could be a totally different situation. Whoever takes his place is like, we're going to take a different route. And all of a sudden now you have open warfare between Palestinians on both sides and Israel. It's a different situation. You know, Hezbollah gets involved. It's a different Hezbollah, you know, Shiite or not, you know, they have proven themselves capable of fighting the IDF. They have proven themselves they are capable of going toe to toe with the IDF and actually coming out victorious, or coming out at least on the even hand. With Syria in such shambles, and it's even though Bashar al-Assad seems to have retaken it, he's still on shaky ground.
Sure.
You know, who knows what could happen, and so that's the scariness, I guess, of history. You don't know what's going to happen next. So who knows what's going to happen? And that's the thing. I always want to keep my I won't say options open, but I acknowledge that I don't know how victory is going to look. You know,
Yeah, I mean,
because that's the thing.
I think that's something important just to mention here for, you know, just to qualify this is, you know, it's not an issue of advocating violence. It's not like we're saying there's going to be warfare because we want warfare as such. We want violence. No, we don't want this. But what I'm saying is that in history, to remove an occupation, you require people to take back their rights. Okay? Even if you want to talk about the international law and international community, even according to that, if people are occupied, they can resist by any means necessary. This is even then in their law, right? Forget the Sharia. This is even in their law. So this is just common. No, you know, it's not an issue of saying, yeah, we would just want to fight. And you know, if tomorrow the Europeans who are in Palestine realized, wow, our forefathers did a big injustice, I'm going back to Brooklyn, I'm going back to Moscow, I'm going back to wherever, and they just left, and the people went back to their homes. Alhamdulillah, it doesn't have to be fighting, right? You understand? So no one wants fighting, but look, the reality is these people will only understand a certain language, and that is a language of strength. And ultimately, that's the thing. And if people see that as being bad and negative, well, look what they're doing. They just killed almost 30,000 people. It's not like they're willing to, stop violence. So why does it always seem like if Muslims speak about resistance and it comes under terrorism, but everyone else has got a free hand to do whatever they want? That's not the case. It shouldn't be like that.
Right. Yeah, that's the general bias of against Muslims. It's the reason why Martin Luther King is so popular and Malcolm X is not. Because Martin Luther King, nothing against him. He was a black hero, but he preached love thy enemy, which is great when you're the enemy. You want when you are the enemy, yes, that definitely the road you want to take. You definitely promote that message. Yes, love your enemy. Whereas Malcolm X was more of the by any means necessary. And that is not the message you want to hear if you are the enemy or the oppressor. You don't want to, that's not the message you want to hear. So of course, yes, they've always when I say they, I mean the global Western structure of the world right now, which is essentially, centered around the three, London, New York, and Paris. Though that global structure that controls the world as we have right now. Though it is, I believe, fracturing. That's the thing
Yeah,
that we don't
100%.
know.
Yeah.
We don't, and that's, I'm not going to give you a history lesson, but the United Nations today is based upon the victories of World War II, organizing the world as they saw fit. And they included Russia and China just to be nice. It was really, those three nations I mentioned, Washington, D.C., I said New York City, but I really meant Washington, D.C., London, and Paris. Those three nations reorganizing the world in a way that benefited them and not to seem too Eurocentric or not to seem too Eurocentric or Western, they allowed Russia and China into the mix as well. But that structure that has existed since the end of World War II is fracturing, and honestly, I think it first started with United States invasion of Iraq. That started it, and this situation right now, the war in Gaza is perpetuating it and furthering it, and also the Western nation's own internal corrupt policies and practices and everything. Its ability to make money out of nothing, promotion of all sorts of social vices, all these things lowering its population. The house of cards is built up over this imaginary money. We call it riba, but they call it modern finance. But however, this whole house of cards, all this stuff is really starting to eat away at its own foundations. And much of the, I won't say chaos, but much of the things we see in the world right now is because people are noticing that the United States just can't, do like Batman and rush into another nation as it used to be able to do. It doesn't have the political will. It still has a military might, but doesn't have the political will or the economic ability to do that as it used to do. It just can't rush into all these nations anymore. And none of the European nations, maybe Germany may have the ability to do it, but I don't think they want to do it. UK and Paris can't really do it. France can't even hold on to Africa anymore. They're losing Africa. They may run out of Africa, and they can't even hold on to that. So yes, the Western global structure that we have, modern world order, is fracturing. I don't know where it's going to be in the next 10 years. Allah knows best. So that may be an opening for rearranging the way things are in the Middle East, inshallah, or particularly in Palestine, rearranging the way things are there. Which is why I said I don't know how things are going to look, how victory is going to look, or what's going to happen. And I do believe that, however, the current system, it will perpetuate, it will continue for some time. Allah knows best how long, but things are changing. Things are changing, and it's a slow change, at least from our perspective. It's a slow change to us, but this is pushing it along. And at some point in time, there's going to be an upheaval. There will be an upheaval at some point in time. The situation in Gaza, even though the current fighting in Gaza, it's not really fighting. Well, Hamas is fighting. Hamas is fighting, so I'm not going to say they're not fighting. So the current crisis in Gaza was inevitable. There's no way that and this the hubris and the arrogance of the Israelis is really mind-boggling. They really thought they could contain 3 million people in a short area in perpetuity forever. Now I know I've heard the stories of Netanyahu knew the Hamas was going to do the attack and all on October 7th and all this. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. The overall Israeli idea was that this is a status quo and we like it like this, and this is the way it's going to be. And then the actual hubris, I've always knew that was untenable. Something was going to happen. You can't keep, that, like when you're trying to imagine a pot boiling over. You can try to hold the lid down as much as you can, but something's going to seep out. And so we'll see where this goes. And I hate that it costs, so many tens of thousands of Muslim lives for this to happen. But I do believe there's going to be some change. There is no going back to the way things were before. How much of a change, what kind of change is going to be, Allah knows best. But there's no going back. Israel's not going to pull out and say, okay, Gazans, come on, move back to your country. Here's some humanitarian aid to rebuild your community back, rebuild your land back again. We're going back to the way things are. I don't think that's going to happen. Even Netanyahu admitted himself he doesn't plan on that. He doesn't plan on that happening. So, I mean, his ridiculous plan, which is laughable, that he plans on remaking Gaza the way the United States remade Japan after World War II, how they got rid of Japan's, Japan used to be a warrior culture for centuries. They were a warrior culture. And even when they were losing their idea, and I'm sorry to get into these here little historical rants, but this is kind of what I do. So even when they were losing in World War II, there were some people who did want a ceasefire, but the general military structure was like, we're going to fight till we'll put sharpened bamboo sticks in every woman and child's hand. We'll fight to the last person. They eventually, the United States defeated them, and the United States had to change that mentality around. Japan was an extremely warrior, militaristic nation, and now, no shame, no hate or shame on the Japanese, but they the anime and cute and J-pop and all these other things they do now. It's
they did the same in Germany,
different.
bro. They did exactly the same in Germany.
Yeah.
Germany is warrior nation as well.
Yeah, and United States, and it's mostly United States though, completely rooted out those militaristic tendencies and turned them into docile Western nations, which is kind of what they are, except that Japan's in the Far East. But other than that, for all intents and purposes, Japan is a Western nation. And Netanyahu, his idea is to do the same thing in Gaza. That's not going to happen. That has never, the closest you have is Turkey, and that was done by a Muslim, or whether you want to call Ataturk a Muslim or not is another different story. But that's done by a Muslim, and even then they had to do it at the point of a gun. And once he was gone, we see it's coming right back up again. So I always told, and I don't want to repeat what I said before, Islam is inevitable, but that's not going to happen. He's not going to be able, even if he is able to somehow defeat Hamas, which I don't think they can do, because he's literally creating the next generation of Hamas warriors as he goes through. And if it was possible for Muslim fighters to come from outside, they definitely would. The only reason they're not doing it is because their own governments help protect Israel's borders. I mean, the Muslim governments surrounding Israel help protect Israel's borders. And so if there wasn't, there would be an influx of mujahideen flooding into Israel all the time. And they know that, which is why they maintain the border as strongly as they do. Otherwise, it'll be, same thing happened in Iraq when the United States toppled Saddam's government. It was impossible to secure the borders then because Iraq was such a big nation, and a lot of it is outside the major cities. It's undeveloped. It's just open desert, and the fighters came through. They call them terrorists, but people came through easily with all that. Same thing with Afghanistan, not so much as, but in Afghanistan during the Soviet era, it did then. But the point of it is, I know I'm going way off point. This is Netanyahu's plan, and the delusion of these people is really strange. I know that that's impossible for him to do. So we'll see. He may not, who knows how long he's going to last in his position anyway. His political stability, just talking about his own political options in Israel are very shaky. If he's moved out and another prime minister comes in, yes, this next prime minister won't be too much better, but they're going to have to do a lot of work. And also the narrative of Israel as this that was built up from the 1948 war and through the subsequent conflicts between or wars between Israel and the surrounding Arab nations has been built up of this single scrappy European nation fighting against, surrounded by millions of people who hate them, and that they've just been able to, through sheer pluck and will of spirit, being able to maintain their existence, even though everybody wants them to be destroyed. That meant that ideology is gone. That I guess there are some people who still believe it, but the modern generation sees that does not accept that ideology anymore, that mentality, and so that narrative is gone. It's will only continue to weaken as it goes forward, and I do think it is a possibility, though very, very remote, that there could be a political shift in the United States as far as either limiting or removing the aid. Not anytime soon, but I think that there is a political shift. AIPAC is not as strong as people thought it was. And so there is a possibility, and AIPAC is the American Israel Political Action Committee. That's Israel's lobby group in the United States. There's a good chance, I don't say good chance, I think there's a remote possibility that the United States continuous aid to Israel could be limited or even halted, hopefully within the next 10 years, inshallah. And that will change things a lot as well.
I think that's
And
only
so,
ever going to happen though, bro, when the US no longer has any strategic interests to achieve from having them there. That will only happen then. Because ultimately, America is about America, right? Ultimately, the day when they no longer are receiving that benefit from these European colonizers and these settlers, trust me, they will stop the funding and they will give the green light. But up until then, I don't see them, letting up their support in any way.
I don't think well, I don't know. I'm not sure if the capability of the United States to continue doing it is in question.
Oh yeah, of course. I mean, just if they can't, they can't. Like,
Yeah.
I don't think there's going to be a case where they want to and they have the capability to do so, and then they won't. I just think there's going to be a reason for it, whether that's because they can't do it anymore or whether because they don't need to do it anymore.
Perhaps I don't know. I'm not sure if I don't think there's. I'm not saying that there's any sort of morality. There's any. I guess I will agree with you that there will be that for the United States to stop it, there will have to be a some sort of political reasoning for them to stop it. So I guess I can agree with you on that one. Right? It won't necessarily be for moral causes, though the morality may make it easier for them to do it. But the primary reason will be for political expediency, whatever that may be at that time when it happens. Yeah. So I can agree with you on that one. Yeah.
Yeah. But just before we sort of like come to an end, bro, if you want to just like tell us, I know you gave a bit of a sneak peek in regards to the next season about the Mughals, but just in case people are tuning in who haven't really listened to your content before, haven't really been introduced to yourself, maybe you want to just mention a few words on what you do.
Sure. And before that, I want to make sure that I also mention that just going off what you said, that Gaza is Palestine is an emotional issue for all Muslims. For any sincere Muslims, it's an emotional issue, and I've experienced already in the past where I've gotten into arguments or heated debates, I will say, with other Muslims who we both want the same thing, but we may have different ideas about how to go about it. But we both want the same thing. I want to make sure that, inshallah, that none of that exists between you and I. Inshallah, we may not agree 100% on everything. I think probably agree on maybe 99%, inshallah. But and it may just be, just maybe a limitation of the communication. But you're still my brother, and I don't want this any disagreement we have with this causing any problems. So I'm not saying it is because it's none in my heart, but I'm sure there's none in yours either. But when this first started, there's another brother I was communicating with, and relationship got kind of shaky. We patched up things afterwards, but it's an emotional situation. We have to be careful that we don't let our frustration with the Israelis and with the IDF turn into frustration with our Muslim brothers and sisters, and be
That's so
careful
true, bro.
of
That's so
doing that.
true.
But regarding the what I'm doing, inshallah, right now I'm off season. I finished season 2, so in the off season I try to work on the premium podcast, which is for the paid members, and we're working through the Umayyad dynasty right now. But right now we're on the reign of Sulaiman ibn Abdul Malik, who was the caliph or the Umayyad caliph just before Omar ibn Abdul Aziz. So we're coming towards the latter end, the last 20 or 30 years of the Umayyad Caliphate now. And the Abbasid, I'm just starting, actually, the next episode I put out on Monday, inshallah, is just starting to discuss the Abbasid conspiracy that's brewing in Khorasan, which is essentially Central Asia. And I'm doing some research on that and trying to build up the narrative of while the Umayyads are doing their Umayyad thing and doing all the stuff they're doing, they are completely unaware of this conspiracy bubbling up in Khorasan. And Khorasan, we say Central Asia, but it was really parts of Iran, Uzbekistan, and some parts of Afghanistan as well, and Turkmenistan too. But this conspiracy, it's really a fascinating story. It is once again a wonderful thing to really read about. But that's what I'm working on right now. The very next episode, I'm talking about why Khorasan was the breeding ground for the Abbasid revolution. Why didn't it happen in Iraq? Why didn't it happen in Syria? Why didn't it happen in the Hijaz? Why did it happen in Khorasan? There's reasons for that. And I'll be here for another 30 minutes explaining this. I'll wait.
And also you want
Inshallah.
people to listen to the podcast, you know what I mean?
Yeah. But it also, basically the Arabs from Iraq brought their same divisions into Khorasan, but they brought it without the connection to their leaders back in Iraq. And so it translated into an overall disenchantment and dislike of the Umayyad Caliphate. And so the Abbasid propaganda, the Abbasid dawah was ripe for the Muslims of Khorasan. And also the Arabs of Khorasan, Arabs conquered Khorasan, but by the second or third generation, they really weren't Arab anymore. They weren't speaking Arabic. They were now really Persian or Turk or some combination of those. So
Subhanallah. So really
that's really it.
that's a shout out really to the Islamic History Podcast. It's for me, I could never have anything in my heart against you, bro. I remember when I used to listen to the Islamic History Podcast when I was driving to work and stuff, and I didn't really at that time I could have imagined, recording so many shows with yourself, really. So 100%
No.
something which I endorse, guys. Check out the Islamic History Podcast. It's a history in a different light, and it's presented excellently, and kind of like designed for kind of people we are today. It's not too long, and it's very topical, and definitely check it out. And join the premium access as well, because there's a lot more goodies in there. In regards to one final thing before we come to a close, bro. In regards to the YouTube stuff, maybe we can chat about this offline and stuff like that. But I think that actually we'll speak about it offline. There's a couple of things which are
Okay.
worthwhile mentioning, inshallah. But on that
Okay.
note, bro, I think it's been a um really good episode. We've spoken
Alhamdulillah.
about many things, and just to reiterate as well, we disagree. Muslims disagree. Look, that's just how it is. We do it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There's no ego here. There's no waswasa that's gonna kick in between brothers. And if it does, then Brother Muttaqi made a fantastic point that rather than us being, angry and venting our frustration towards those people doing the committing genocide, what we tend to do is start fighting between ourselves. And in reality, there's only, two sources that are laughing on this, are pleased about this. The first is Iblis, and the second is those people who are actually against Islam and Muslims. So, you know, we discuss, we do it within the atmosphere of Iman, And inshallah, Allah
Yeah.
will guide us to the correct path. And, wherever shortcomings we have, this is how we better ourselves, and this is how we can improve our understanding. And inshallah ta'ala, maybe on the day of judgment, these type of discussions that we had will put us in good stead, inshallah, and tilt those scales
Oh,
in the right direction, which is something which we
I
all
mean,
pray for.
inshallah.
But Brother Muttaqi, as I normally do before we end the session, really, before we end the podcast, any final thoughts on anything that you have? I always like to get your final thoughts, bro.
I'll just encourage people to continue watching how things go through the world. And there's a lot of stuff going on, but just watch how the global South is moving. The global South means basically non-Western nations. Watch how things are moving in Africa, in Asia, particularly East Asia, China, Southeast Asia. Of course, we have the Malaysia is going through some changes right now as well. Just try to get a beat on the way the world is moving just by watching the overall sentiment of people and just see how things go over the next 10 years. I know it's a long time to wait, but just see, inshallah, and just keep your eye on things, and just things are going to change, I believe, inshallah. Allah knows best, but things are going to definitely change.
Inshallah ta'ala, bro. Inshallah. And I pray that they will change for the better. I mean,
I mean,
and yeah, guys, check out once again Islamic History Podcast. And I've not even spoken to Brother Muttaqi about this. He probably might reject me, but I do plan to asking him
we're on
anyway.
the spot here.
uh, of maybe he can spare some time in Ramadan and record an episode with me on something, and inshallah, make the most of the
Absolutely, inshallah.
blessings of Ramadan. Now I've got it on video, I've got evidence to back that up. But on a serious note, inshallah ta'ala, guys, if you're new to the channel, please subscribe to the channel and like the video. And if you found this discussion beneficial, then please share it with your families and your friends. And also, I really want to hear what your thoughts are in the comment field. I'm sure you've got an opinion on this issue. Maybe we've said something which is not correct. If there's something out there that we overlooked, then definitely leave us with some feedback. And inshallah ta'ala, myself, and I'm sure if Brother Muttaqi has time, we can respond to any comments or questions within the chat. On that note, first of all, a big jazakallah khair to my guest, Brother Muttaqi Ismail from the Islamic History Podcast, and to everyone else, until the next one, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.